It's good to see you, man. I think this is one that I've wanted to do for a while. Like, kind of been a long time coming. I think the timing of it is particularly interesting. So I appreciate you coming on. You've been on a little bit of a media tour, which has been enjoyable. Actually, you do a lot of pods. You got the backdrop looking perfect, and dude, I think to start, like, I'll let you do an intro and get, rattle some things off. But I think the first thing I want to say is that my life in crypto, also for the chat saying you can't hear my fixed audio, don't worry. My life in crypto really changed once I got out of the 2022, 2023 bear market. And I think, like a lot of people, 2024 on Solana changed my life. And it really was the meme coin run where for the first time I felt like I was on my toes and had a grasp of what people wanted to trade, how they wanted to trade, things that I was interested in crypto. And in particular, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot, the 2024 token 2049 speech that you did about meme coins was, I mean, dude, it's like a fucking masterpiece. And I think the verbiage that we throw around is it was the first piece of media or intellectual framework, if you will, that made meme coins investable. And I'm not sure if you fully realized the scope and the scale and the long tail effects that speech in that presentation would have on crypto, but undeniably, whether people like you, hate you, feel indifferent about you, it changed the framework and the landscape of what we do in crypto. So yeah, man, I'm hyped to have you on, and I'm curious, like, when you did that speech, did you realize the scale of what you were about to do?
It would be good if it gets 1,000 likes or 2,000 likes, but it definitely exceeded expectations.
It was, I mean, it had like 200,000 views on YouTube or something, 250,000 views maybe.
Yeah, I think it's still the #1 video that Token 2049 ever had.
I'm sure they
which just shows you that, the people, the people, they want meme coins, right? They want something like it.
How long did you work on the framework to be able to put together your thoughts in that, like, concise manner to be able to make that presentation?
In my head, the whole summer, but actually physically, maybe like 4 days.
Okay, so the whole stuff, like, are you like one of these people that you throw an idea in your head and you ruminate on it and you play with it for a while and you sort of let it, like, it builds out and then boom, 4 day sprint, like you get it all down on paper?
I go on long walks. Nietzsche and Newton both spoke highly of them as well, where, the ideas just come to me.
Well, Newton also lost it all before he died, but shout out to Mr. Newton. I mean, look, I'll let you start with just real quick, just to set the stage, however you want to intro yourself. Like, I'm sure most people here are familiar with you, but give like a quick intro into who you are and I don't know how we got here.
Yeah. So my name is Murad. I'm originally from Azerbaijan. Lived in the United States for 7 or 8 years. Was the first man from Azerbaijan to attend Princeton. Worked in ThreadGuy, worked in commodities trading. Was my first crypto purchase was at the 2013 top. I was kind of at the right place at the right time in China, and took a break for 2-3 years, like many other people have. And then when 2016, when the ICO era started booming, I kind of took crypto more seriously and been full-time in crypto ever since, doing a bunch of different things, trading, investing, building on-chain analytics, and obviously meme coins became quite obvious that they would be a big thing in 2024. Actually, since 2023, but I think early 2024, it became abundantly clear that they would be play a big role this cycle and potentially the next. So I've kind of been focused almost wholeheartedly on memes ever since.
You were the first man from Azerbaijan to go to Princeton?
Yes.
What did you go
There
to
was
school
a
for?
girl. There was a girl before me, but I was the
Oh,
first guy.
fuck. What
Yeah.
did you go to school for?
East Asian Studies, which is like Chinese history, Chinese economy, etc.
That's awesome. Dave, you got beat. You got beat by a couple years, but it's still impressive. It's still impressive. But dude, I appreciate the intro. What were you doing first Dogecoin run? Completely uninterested or
The
agnostic? Like
2017 or the 2021?
I guess both. Really both.
2017, I was trading like ICOs and tech coins, like IOTA, 0x, like a bunch of stuff from that era. 2021, I caught a chunk of the Doge move, not all of it, but like a solid like 4x, 5x of the move.
But you weren't like a believer in what was happening at that point.
No, back then I was holding things for a few weeks at a time.
It's funny how that's done like a crazy 180 shift. I guess okay, so to lay out the framework a little bit, this is where I think we could start. And I know some of these things you talk about a lot, but I think we can go deeper than maybe some of the surface level stuff. Like, can you lay out your framework for the form that crypto is taking and like where you think market flows and focus is going from where we are now, November 2025?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a pretty dense question, but I'll do my best to answer that.
Sorry.
So, the crypto space has changed a lot, right? I mean, this is my third or fourth cycle, depending on how you count. It's definitely become very institutionalized. This cycle so far, obviously goes without saying, has been predominantly digital asset treasury, ETF, institution driven. I think this is going to continue. I think it's a sign that the space is maturing. More importantly, two factors that have essentially played a big role to make this cycle the way it is. Actually, I would say three forces. So first of all, PumpFun, right?
Mhm.
I don't have to tell you how it massively exponentially increased the overall number of coins, right? And in the mind of a retail person and even an institutional person, it doesn't matter if it's like a tech altcoin or it's a meme coin. They're all just coins. They're all tokens, right? And their number has gone up by a factor of 10,000, 100,000. So, which means that the bar for quality, for community, for diamond handedness, for any potential winner or any potential future winner is higher now, right? The market wants higher quality because the supply of assets has increased. So that's one thing. The other thing is we have been under a quantitative tightening regime so far, right? Which historically, if you've studied this, is very bearish alts, especially bearish alts relative to BTC, right? So the very fact that alts have even done something in the last 2-3 years, and the fact that BTC has gone from 15K to 125K, even though I would argue the conditions were somewhat restrictive, is already kind of a positive sign in and of itself. And the third thing is everybody asks, why is there no vertical parabola this cycle in crypto as a whole? It's because crypto moves in 100% in parallel with the rate of growth of money supply. And while the past two cycles, specifically 2017 and 2021, money supply has gone parabolic, or specifically the year-over-year percentage growth has gone parabolic. Over the past 2 years, money supply growth has been more like steady. And similarly, BTC has also been steady, right? If you overlay these two charts, they're almost identical charts. So I remain bullish. I think the 4-year believers and sellers are going to be wrong. I think we're going to be bottoming here sometime soon. I'm bullish on BTC, and I'm even more bullish on some of the alternative assets. And of course, we can get into that as well.
What do you think is invalidation to the 4-year cycle believers being right? And that, like, how do you think about that? Like, you're wrong. 4-year cycle isn't invalidated.
I think a monthly close below 69.
Monthly close below 6, like previous cycle ATH, and we're in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't even think we're going to get there. I think we're going to be bottoming here in the next 3 weeks.
Cool. And so, you mentioned PumpFun. What impact do you think PumpFun had on crypto? Like, was this always when you sort of were developing your thesis on meme coins? Was something like PumpFun existing like in the
Yeah.
cards there? Do you think PumpFun
Yeah.
was good for
So
crypto?
I kind of build up my mental framework slash thesis around meme coins in the summer of 2024, and PumpFun was already kind of starting to heat up.
Yeah.
I said already, I think as early as May or June of that year, I said, we're going to go from a situation where instead of 500 new coins being created per day, as was the case back then, to a situation where they're going to be making 100,000 coins per day, even maybe 1,000,000 coins per day, right? And I was saying, under that scenario where there's literally 1 billion coins being created per day, what is going to win? And answering that question is the key to success, in my opinion. And that's what my entire thesis is built around. Essentially, it's all about community, right? You want to build a community that is so laser focused, diamond handed, and obsessed, and has a mission, almost like a movement level, religion level, right? If you have such a thing, then the core holders are not going to be distracted by new coins. And essentially, that is the game that we're playing here, right? I don't care about fiat values. All I care about is the strength of the community. All I care about is building 50,000, 100,000 plus super strong soldiers that then, regardless of what's going on with price, they're going to be hustling even while you're asleep, right?
Yeah.
And essentially, it doesn't matter if the price is at $2 or 50 cents. What matters is that the community continues to hustle and continues to onboard new people. And as soon as that's the case, belief is actually front running everything. As long as belief is growing stronger, price is going to catch up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that hold the belief that PumpFun is the reason that we didn't have a proper alt season. PumpFun ruined crypto. To me, PumpFun, or what it sort of embodies, like no friction to launch, was always inevitable that we were going to get there. And I think the similar thing happened with NFTs, obviously at a different scale, but friction to launch is not enough of a barrier to like stop people from participating in the free market. I'm curious, at what point did you switch? Like you said, 2017 cycle, 2021, you were playing ICOs, and then you were trading coins that you were holding for weeks at a time, days at a time. What was the switch flip in your head that you went from basically scalping, day trading, if you will, into the believing thesis that you have now?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I'll say one last thing about PumpFun and whether it has ruined alt seasons or not. So in order to understand why retail people come, first of all, any kind of parabolas, and when I say parabola, I mean any kind of coin going like above 10 billion, above 20 billion. For such a thing to happen, whether you like it or not, you need a retail wave of kind of new people or returning people coming back, right? And you have to ask yourself, why do retail people come to crypto? In my opinion, it's like one of 3 or 4 things. Essentially, either from their coworker or from their, classmate or from their cousin or from their friend. They see that one of those people has had some success in crypto, right? And essentially, it's all about stories on the ground, at the micro level, on the streets level. People need to hear stories that somebody has succeeded with crypto. Now, there's only a limited amount of money that generally like retail people have, right? So what happened last cycle, very simply speaking, right? Or previous cycles, you would have more like 100 coins. And if you only have 100 coins, it's much more likely that that fixed amount of money would send a handful of them to like 5 billion, 10 billion, 20 billion plus, right? And when a coin goes from 1 billion to 100 billion, that generates stories in the media, on the streets, in group chats with friends, in iMessage, text chains, etc., right? Now, what happened so far this cycle is that same fixed amount of money, instead of sending 100 coins with that fixed amount of money, now that same fixed amount of money is split between more like 2 million coins, right? And essentially what happens is, instead of having these 3 or 4 stories of coins going to 10 billion plus, which actually generates the media buzz and the friend buzz, etc., now the coins only go to like 100 million or 80 million, as you often see on PumpFun, and then those coins die forever, right? So my whole thesis is, we need, like, first of all, A, for retail to come back, but B, for retail to even make money in the first place, we essentially need to build something that is so crazy at the emotional level, at the spiritual level, that actually goes to 10 billion, 20 billion, 30 billion plus. And not only is that going to generate more parabolas like this, that's actually the only way for us to win, right? When you're playing in the PumpFun trenches, again, excuse my French, but fundamentally, you're essentially trying to either scam your followers, either scam your friends, either scam your group chats. Because the stakes are so small, it's essentially a very limited number of people playing musical chairs. What I'm saying is, for us to truly win, both individually and as a space, we need to shift from PvP to PvE, and we need to build a critical mass of people, whether it's 100,000 people or 300,000 people, whatever it is, and all unite under one cause, right? If we all unite under one cause instead of gambling with small chips, that's how we truly kind of change the world and actually make money. Because once even one coin goes above 20 billion, 30 billion in the meme coin space, in the cult coin space, that's A, going to lift other meme coins and other cult coins, but B, that's actually the only way to make money. Because if you reach a critical mass, you reach a point where the asset continues to grow itself, because essentially you're sending these sort of multi-week, multi-month ripples across society. And that's how you actually win. Now, to answer your second question, which is when I switch from trading to holding, you reach a point in crypto. And for me, it was, third cycle, fourth cycle, right? I've realized that, let's look at this. For 100 people in crypto that have truly made it, right? You start kind of noticing a pattern that 95 of them, they weren't active traders. They weren't perp traders. They weren't gamblers. They weren't trenchers. 95 people out of 100 people I know that have made it in crypto, they've simply made it through holding, right? Whether it was XRP, whether it was BTC, whether it was, Cardano, whether it was Chainlink, whatever it was, whether it was Dogecoin, whatever it was, the most surefire and highest probability way to win in crypto is to actually hold, ideally something which other people are holding as well. Essentially, again, we are coming back to the same concept. Holding and diamond handing is the only way for us to create the next XRP, the next Doge, the next GME. Now, third thing that I'll add, in order to figure out which cult is going to emotionally resonate with people and actually has the highest probability of success, and by success, let's say 30 billion, 40 billion, 50 billion plus, you need to understand the zeitgeist of the time, right? And I guess before delving into that, maybe you want to say something first.
Yeah, a couple things. The first thing is that your original take, I'll maybe say it a little bit more blunt, but I think the best onboarding mechanism into finance and markets in general is somebody more who you believe is more retarded than you makes money. Like, this is like the ultimate, like, my little cousin, my uncle made money on GME options or whatever, and you're like, what does this guy know? The second thing is like, well,
absolutely,
yeah. The second thing is like, well, I don't agree with everything that you say. I think one like mutual spot we can land on is that the biggest onboarding events into finance, I'll use the word finance because I like the GME stuff as well, is that these like multi-billion, 10 billion plus pumps are what really gets people looking and paying attention. Like Chill Guy didn't do it, right? You catch it for a second, you rinse them all, they get destroyed, and you might as well have never had happened. Trump went high enough, but it only happened over 72 hours, and so it doesn't have the impact at all, just the negative downside effect. I guess to like talk about some current stuff that I want to get your views on, and then we could work backwards into some Memecoin stuff, is, I kind of have this thought that at the bottom of markets, like what we saw at the bottom of 2023, people get very nihilistic, and it feels like meme coins are what persevere through. At the top, when things are really inflated and we have these ridiculous valuations, a similar thing happened with NFTs. Is like, if you're holding a Bored Ape at, $500,000 floor, the same way if you're holding one of these DeFi protocols at 20, 30, 40, 50 billion dollars, you need a way to justify to yourself why this thing is worth this much at the top of markets. And I feel like, just like we over-index for nihilism at the bottom, we over-index for cash flows and revenues at the top. And so we're kind of right now going into this, I don't know, meta. I don't love the word revenue meta, if you will, where all anyone wants to talk about is PumpFun makes $1 million a day, token buybacks, Hyperliquid $1 million a day, token buybacks, Uniswap turns on the fee switch. What's the revenue? What's the PE ratio? What are their earnings? How much are they buying back? Like my question for you is, what do you think about the idea of revenue coins? And do you think this is the final stage of crypto, if you will?
Yeah, I think they're here to stay. Because it makes investors sleep at night knowing, oh, like there's a framework that I can value this at, etc. And institutional people already have, 400 years of history of doing discounted cash flow analysis. But to me, I don't think that's what's going to give you those like 100x type returns, which people come to crypto for. And I'll explain why. So my take, and I think I tweeted this a year or 2 years ago, I said, revenue is better in bearish conditions and it's worse in bullish conditions. And the reason for that is because in my mind, revenue sets a floor, but it also sets a ceiling, right? When there's a revenue, people anchor much more tightly to certain price levels, to certain ratios. So it's harder for kind of a revenue focused protocol to do 100x within 3 months because it's less likely that their revenue will 100x in 3 months also, right? But in extremely bullish conditions, I think it's better to not have any revenue at all because then the sky's the limit. People don't know how to value this new weird thing. And actually, if the conditions are truly bullish and reflexive, then the momentum is just going to keep carrying that forward. Now, think about this. BTC never had revenue. XRP never had revenue. You know what I mean? Like Chainlink never had revenue. GME, it went up not because of revenue. Like everybody knows this. It's because all of these things went up because people united together under one thing. And so ultimately, what I'm more interested in, not revenue, but I'm interested in what kind of emotions are going to be triggered in people's hearts that's going to get them to wake up at 5 a.m. and go promote this thing. That's truly what I think is the recipe for going viral.
So a couple things on here. Also, GME example is a good one. There's actually a couple examples of a sort of a mix of both, right? Maybe I'll ask you about Tesla after, but do you think as we progress in crypto that token holders want to look more like equity holders? Like, is this a progression in crypto?
So I also tweeted about this about a year ago. I said, this is the future of crypto, right? There's 4 kind of asset classes that are going to be here. There is BTC / store of value candidates. There is going to be stable coins. There's going to be cash flow coins, and there's going to be cults. And essentially, these are the 4 categories. Whenever you're investing in crypto, you're investing in one of the 4 categories.
I like that. You had an interesting take on the payments stablecoin stuff as well. I think it was an SPX pod you did I don't know 5 days ago, a week or so. It was a live stream. I forget what it's called. There's 4 guys on it. You were the 5th. It was a good one. And everyone's obsessed with the payments and stablecoins right now. That's all anyone wants to talk about. All the traditional institutions want to talk about stablecoins. All anyone wants to work on is like payments, crypto, Venmo, whatever it is. And you had this interesting take I hadn't really thought about, which is like the margins are actually kind of terrible in payments and stablecoins. And it's also not like if you beat Visa, you are going to beat Visa with significantly less margin. And there's probably going to be multiple companies that take up that market share rather than just one entity. Like, do you pay any attention, invest at all, have any interest in the stablecoin payment stuff? And do you think people should be paying attention to it?
Liking and caring about stablecoins is essentially for normies that are looking for some semblance of psychological security. This is not the area for visionaries. The stablecoins, they just extend the power of the dollar. It does absolutely nothing to change the world, really. I think it's a completely boring space. I think like you said, margins are going to become razor thin. I think stablecoins are going to be an extremely commoditized product that just simply sits on all the smartphone in the world. Yes, you're giving some people in the second and third world a superior payment mechanism, but I'm skeptical that it's going to be like this crazy thing. You know what I mean? What I'm much more interested in is things like BTC and things like SPX 6900 that are trying to use belief to essentially completely flip existing systems. Essentially, just I'm much more interested in absolutely crazy shit rather than just, oh, like let's be another Visa. You know what I mean?
I was actually gonna do my best to. I was gonna try to get through this entire interview and not say the word SPX once. I'm gonna just fail on that. You did this interview with Pomp in 2018. It was by the way, I'm sure you've heard this. It's really good. And one of the things that you said, I'm gonna botch it exactly, but like in order for Bitcoin to succeed, like most other things have to fail. Actually, like it has to kind of engulf like most store value slash most currencies. Do you view the SPX thesis through a framework that in order for SPX to win, basically everything else in meme coins has to fail? Like, is it winner takes all generally?
No. You know, I've been a Bitcoin maximalist for almost a decade, right? And your desire is always for your one coin that you're holding to absolutely destroy everything else. But really, the best you can hope for is more like winner take most. It's never going to be winner take all. There's always going to be people creating coins, pumping coins, other things coming and going, etc. But I think every time there's a dip in coins, in meme coins specifically, ultimately some of them are just not going to come back, right? And the communities that persist regardless of what's going on with price, every time there's a dip, there's going to be fewer and fewer of those communities, right? So for example, Giga just 2x today. I think SPX 6900 is going to start on its third parabolic run and beyond. But ultimately, no, I don't think other coins will die, but the number of quality coins is becoming fewer and fewer by the day. I always tell people, whatever category in crypto you're investing in, invest in category leaders, because they're essentially become kind of like a quasi index for that particular category. So whatever category in crypto you're dabbling in, make sure like your biggest position is in category leaders, ideally fresh to this cycle, because that's kind of like the highest probability way to win.
Arthur Hayes came on the stream and he said, "Why would you ever buy a coin that doesn't have motion?" I think that's his way of saying buy the category leaders. I know I'm flip flopping a little bit here, but really quick, I want to go back to the revenue coins, and I think it sort of feels like the way you said that these stable coins and these like payment protocols are gonna sort of be commoditized basically to zero on fees. It kind of feels like DeFi could go that direction as launchpads. We saw what happened to launchpads. We saw what happened to NFT marketplaces in 2021, 2022. There's absolutely no reason the same thing doesn't happen to DeFi. We see what's happening with the competition in perp dexes right now. You could imagine that's spread out across the entire vertical. What are the implications of this? Like, what happens to these?
So here's my take. And again, I think I tweeted about this a year and a half ago. I don't like revenues, and I'll tell you why. So if you take a long-term stance and let's say 7, 8, 9 years, everything that produces revenues or cash flows or relies on profit margins, the competition there, especially in the context of AI agents, AI code generation, open source, which our industry is kind of relatively open source, etc. All of those are going to become razor thin, if not outright free, right? And so ultimately, you're kind of limited there. Now, I'm sure that a lot of the revenue protocols ultimately are still going to 5x, 10x, even 30x from here. But what I'm interested in is purely philosophical, purely belief-based assets. Like BTC is trying to destroy gold, destroy fiat money, right? SPX 6900 is trying to flip the stock market or absorb trillions into that one vessel. I like it because there's no limit. You know what I mean? There's no limit to human belief. There's no formulas. There's no business models. There's no anchors for you to kind of say, oh, like the formula is saying it should be this much. The formula is saying it should be this much.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you're essentially competing with, you're not like, because there's no revenues, there's no incentive for any other kind of developers to come in and say, oh, we're going to build a competitor, the profit margins are going to go down, etc. You're essentially just competing on pure belief, pure attention, pure community. And I think that if you do that well, now there you can have a 200x, there you can have a 400x, you know what I mean? And to me, that's what's truly exciting.
I think this is one of your best takes, honestly, because okay, I'll ask it like this. Like, what about these sort of pseudo ideology company coins that also do revenue? Like how do you evaluate something like Tesla, which is like,
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is a component which is like cash flow based, and then there's a component which is like cult based. And essentially, you have to add all the components, all the bricks in order to arrive at the valuation. So I've always said this. I said Tesla is not just like the Tesla stock. It's not just priced off of cars. It's priced off of them having a great leader. Is the wealthiest person in the world. It's a vision. It's a multi-decade vision to become a robotics company, to become an AI
yep.
company, and all of that. It's almost like a quasi modern day religion, and that is what's making the stock successful. It's not just the cars being sold. So there are components. Some of them are physical and some of them are spiritual, and you have to add them all to arrive at the final valuation. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and I think I agree with you. And like, how extreme are you in this viewpoint for crypto in particular? Like 10 years from now, is everything just going to be open source and free, and then the only things with value are going to be ideology and memes? Like, are you that extreme with it?
So, Harvard Business School magazine, which I typically don't read, but in 2017, they had a great headline for one of their articles. It said, "The promise of blockchain is a world without middlemen," right? Which essentially means that you want the fees to go to zero. Essentially, you want everything to be free. You want all the software to be free. You want all the services to be free. So ultimately, I think gradually, the fees are going to become zero, right? We're seeing that with just lighter versus hyperliquid.
Yeah.
We're seeing that with other lending platforms coming, offering their services cheaper than Aave, etc. So there will be moats like community liquidity, etc., security, etc. But ultimately, in our space, which is relatively open source and accessible for everybody can come in, start building stuff. There are very few moats and there are very few loyalties. And the only loyalty at the end of the day is belief. And that is what you have to optimize for.
How do you think this impacts talent coming into crypto? Because there's this weird balance there, which is like, one of the most beautiful sells of crypto is like, yes, you can come do 1,000x as a trader, but it's also, if you build, at least at this stage, if you build a good financial product, you can be Alon, you can be Jeff, you can come make $1 million a day in perpetuity, potentially, for at least as long as the market will allow. If that goes away, do you think we just get to a spot where the tech is the tech and it can exist on and we don't need the new talent? Or does this become a bottleneck for blockchain to get as big as we think it will get?
I don't think this is an issue for the next 20, 30 years because in the grand scheme of things, blockchain is still early, crypto is still early. I do believe that absolutely all of finance will be decentralized. All of trading will be on the blockchain. Everything will be on it. But at the same time, we need to understand that, by now it's abundantly clear that blockchain isn't good for everything. It's good for like a narrow use cases, most of them financial, most of them value related, most of them money related. But at those things, it does extremely well, right? I mean, we're still probably a couple decades away from, Bitcoin becoming the dominant money of the world, and, all of, banking services, lending services, trading services, all of it being on chain, right? Until then, people are going to be coming in and out of the space.
It was honestly, I wasn't here in 2018. I was like a high school student. I didn't come into crypto until 2020 for NFTs. It was pretty great, like knowing you, at least parasocially knowing you as Memecoin Murad, and then listening to you on Pomp 2018 talk about like Bitcoin Murad, is pretty wild. It's also pretty wild to see how many parallels stayed true. I'm curious, from that 2018 time in your life and where you stood with belief in Bitcoin, how much of your original thesis changed and evolved to where we are right now?
I mean, nothing. Everything I said in November 2018, I still believe in it. Obviously, I think you would agree that I've been proven right since then, because
Yeah, I would agree.
BTC was at like 5,000 back then. And I think it's still going to 10 million plus. So it's just a slow and steady road.
Your number was 10. I think that would have come from how Finney math was how you get to 10 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be more than 10 million.
Do you really believe that?
Yeah, because I mean, they're going to keep printing money. They have no choice. The governments have no choice but to keep printing money, which means that a cheeseburger is going to cost $50, which means that BTC is not going to be costing 10 million. It's going to be costing like 25 million, 30 million.
You had this. Okay, this I've never. Let me ask you this: if that's true, like if a cheeseburger is 50, 100, $500 plus, what happens to the world? Like, what happens to the world if you are right about hyper Bitcoinization and everybody else faded or was wrong? Like, what does the world look like?
So that's a really good question. And I think that I mentioned Zeitgeist earlier, and I want to talk about that as well. I think to be a good crypto investor, and frankly, just to be a good investor, period, you need to be in touch with modern day issues, modern day trends, modern day culture, especially I would argue among Gen Z, millennials, etc. And kind of what are their issues, what are their problems, how much are they suffering? And in my opinion, this is the first generation whose lives are actually shittier than their parents. The first generation ever. Like over the past 500 years, whether it's Europe or America or anywhere else, the children had a better life than their parents. But this is going to be the first generation whose lives are shittier than their parents, in my opinion, right? And I don't know if you're aware of this, but essentially, mental health issues are at all-time highs. Wealth inequality are at Great Gatsby levels. They are at 1925 levels. 80% of young men are incels essentially right now, and that number will probably increase even more. And all of these things are, of course, connected. The constant money printing is exacerbating wealth inequality. Like only top 6% of the population are benefiting from this. And the bottom 94% are going to suffer. And that gap is going to keep growing. But the government has no choice but to continue printing because otherwise the system breaks down. So there's essentially no other choice but to continue inflating money away. And so what's going to happen is because of wealth inequality, houses are going to become more unaffordable. Everything is going to grow more expensive. And all of this is before AI and robotics have taken all the jobs, which is inevitably going to happen, right? Now, my whole thesis is let's extend all of these trends in our minds and kind of extrapolate and simulate what people are going to do. And I think essentially my belief is that a growing number of people are essentially going to be, I mean, there's going to be 20 things that this leads to, but one of the things that I think is going to happen is people are essentially going to protest all of these things happening by essentially uniting in a very GME-like fashion around certain assets and trying to send them from like a couple 100 million to 100 billion plus. And that will be like their way of saying a fuck you to the system. And essentially, not to shill kind of my thing too much, but I think SPX 6900 is the next GME. It's going to continue growing. The community is insane. It's actually what BTC did to gold. SPX 6900 is doing to GME. And our goal is to send this to 1 trillion, 2 trillion, 3 trillion plus. And essentially that way, we're essentially getting rich on our own terms. And eventually TradFi people are going to start bidding this up too. Companies are going to start bidding this up too. Other whales are going to start bidding this up too, because essentially it's a modern day movement. And it's a way for us to send a middle finger to the system, have fun, and get rich in the process.
By the way, of course you're allowed to show the coin. I mean, of course. Can you list a couple of the other 20 things that you think are like predominantly relevant here?
So I mean, fundamentally, you have to ask yourself, and I'll ask you directly, what do you think is the meaning of our lives?
Dude, I mean, that's
in one word, and answer that in one word.
I don't even know how to answer that. I hate. I'm gonna say happiness, but I don't really like self-actualization.
Okay, but where does happiness come from?
Fulfillment, I would say.
Okay, I'll tell you my version of it. I think the meaning of human existence is reproduction. And it's essentially your happiness and fulfillment and self-actualization that you refer to. It comes from having children. Now, Gen Z's fertility rate is at 0.9, which is lower than 2, and 2 is the replacement rate, which means that Gen Z is having fewer relationships, fewer friends, fewer kids, less sex than anyone in the last 600 years, right? And essentially that is the #1 cause of suffering. And, actually, the male suicide rate is going up exponentially in America. 2/3 of people are living at their parents' house. Mental health rates, anxiety rates, depression rates, they're all going parabolic. Obviously, all of this is because people are lonely. They have no community. COVID has made this even worse. Remote work has made this even worse. And the fact that the stock market is now more important than reality itself is making all of this worse. And actually, if you talk to boomers that are benefiting from house prices going up, houses that they bought for $35,000 in the 70s, they don't know about essentially the plight of the Gen Z, right? They don't know because they're like, oh, just go get a job, go get a girl. It's like they think it's so easy, but it's actually much more difficult, right?
Yeah.
And essentially, you're now competing with people in India for jobs. You're now competing with people in Monaco for in the dating market, etc. I'm sure you understand all these things. I don't need to teach you. But essentially, the young people are suffering. About, I would say, 30% of women and 70% of men are essentially suffering right now as we speak. And I think like the system is boiling the frog slowly, and I think something is going to break. And I think that there are going to be some assets, BTC, obviously, fundamentally, especially for deep-pocketed people. But there's going to be a couple of other assets that I think in a GME-like fashion are going to be absorbing that anger, absorbing that frustration, absorbing that loneliness, absorbing that dissatisfaction, and also absorbing and providing that service, which is, having a family online, having a fraternity online, meeting friends, having people, and giving people mission, purpose, and meaning in their lives. All of these things, they're complete zero right now. And essentially, I think SPX 6900 is going to be one of those assets that absorbs sort of billions of dollars. But most importantly, what you want is you want to build an army of people that are going hard on social media. And that's how we take a coin to 100 billion plus. That's the only way.
Do you think taking this coin to 100 trillion plus fixes these issues? Like, will reproduction rates be higher if SPX 600 is $50 trillion? Or is this sort of like a response to suffering and, this permanent underclass? It's like a response, or is it like a solution?
So obviously it's not going to fix this for everybody, but it's going to fix it for people that are part of the movement. It's a partial fix.
Have we ever in America, or I guess in anywhere, what happened after 1925? You talked about wealth inequality is the furthest it's been since like Gatsby era.
So
what happened after that?
That's a great question. So wealth equality was actually the highest in the 50s and 60s. And coincidentally, and I don't think it's a coincidence, I believe 87% of men were also married in America at the time, right? So these things go hand in hand. Essentially, a big reason why people aren't even dating is because they essentially feel ashamed and their self-esteem is low because they can't even afford to get a one-bedroom studio, right? That's why they're still living with their parents. There's not enough jobs to go around with all the offshoring and all the automation and the AI stuff that hasn't even really begun to take shape. Singlehood is too expensive now, let alone financing your wife and a kid, right? So that is why essentially back then in the 1950s, you had a post-war boom, both in the number of kids being born, but also in the number of jobs. And a milkman could buy a 3-story house. Right now, that's a laughable. That's never going to happen right now, you see? And the reason this happened is because essentially the New York and San Francisco financiers, the beneficiaries of the stock market and the financial system and the tech system, they essentially sold off all of the lower middle class and middle class jobs away to Asia. Essentially, that's what has happened. And because essentially all they care about is sending the stock market prices higher. They don't care what happens to the bottom 95% of people. Essentially, what they've done is they traded off happiness of 200 million people for higher stock prices.
Oh, I don't like that. That last line is brutal. Wow. Is it? I don't have a girlfriend. Is that crazy? Like, should I have a girlfriend in this day and age?
I mean, you probably should, right?
Yeah, I probably should, right? Let me ask you this, Murad, because can this be fixed, or can we just catch the ladder on the way out and buy the coins and make a lot of money? Can this like fundamental issue be fixed?
No, actually every trend that I've discussed, I think it's going to get much worse.
Damn.
Because
Really?
think about it. Think about it. They're going to continue printing money, which if you actually study the way wealth inequality is like actually happens, money printing is the #1 driver of it. This actually means that a smaller and a smaller percentage of people and companies are going to keep benefiting from essentially growth in asset prices. And essentially, young people are going to be suffering more and more. And the way it works is, and I don't mean to like sound dystopian or whatever,
Please.
is you have to become a top 5% man or you're fucked. That's just the way it is. And this is, by the way, this is why you have people doing, you know, hyper gambling. You have people doing looks maxing. You have people doing steroids. You have people essentially having these Hail Mary plays financially. It's because they're understanding this. And inflation is eating away at all of this more and more and more, essentially grinding you down as a human being. So essentially, people are taking more risk than ever before. They're more desperate than ever before. They're more anxious than ever before. And what I'm saying, and what SPX 6900 is saying, is if you do this alone, 97% chance you're just going to fuck yourself even more. Our goal is we actually have to unite together in this grand movement, and this way we support one another. We bring even more people. We essentially build a snowball effect. And SPX 6900 is telling you, if you go alone, yeah, maybe you're going to go fast, but you're going to lose. But if we go together, we're going to go far. And that's the way to win. It's to build a team. It's to build a community. It's to build a cult. It's to build a movement. And that's the only way to win. And that's why you should join SPX 6900. And ThreadGuy, you know, I've watched a lot of your streams. You know, you like to be a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit cynical. But I'm telling you, man, you should join this movement also.
I'll tell you what, Murad, when I get off the stream, I'll click a little just for you because you came on.
Yeah, and make sure to post your address as well. Do it on a fresh address so that we know that you're a diamond hands and that you're not gonna sell within a week.
I mean, you're fucking committed to the bid.
I challenge you. I challenge you to do that.
That was a smile, so maybe I'll do it. I think one thing that I agree with, not even me agreeing with it, more people intuitively feeling it, is this: you got to get to the upper 5%, upper 3%. Like, I think people feel a race to get there, and I don't like to push it because I think it's relatively like, okay, to your answer, what's the meaning of life in one word? It's to reproduce. And so I'm sure at some point, I don't know if you have kids, or you will want to have a family, you will want to have kids. You would like to imagine that your kids can have a good life, right? You would like to imagine your kid could grow up to be 18, to be 25, to be 30. They can have kids. I'm sure you want to be Grandpa Murad at some point. And so the feeling of make it now or be stuck in the permanent underclass forever is one that I like kind of don't want to accept, because it's like a weird one to push onto people, even if intuitively you feel these things are sort of happening. I guess my question for you is, what is the breaking point? Like, where does the stick snap? Will it be one moment in time where you'll be like, yes, this is it? Will it be something that in hindsight we'll look back? Like, where does it happen? Because I would imagine from the way you think about it, when it happens quick. What is that moment to you? Have you thought about what that moment looks like?
You know, historians say that when the average age when a man in a certain civilization gets married goes above 28, usually bad things happen. You know, they've studied thousands of years of history, and that's what they've concluded.
Really?
And right now that number is already at 31.
No.
Right? So it's a bad signal. But you know, there's a lot of negative trends happening in the world right now. I think they're all going to get worse before they ever get better. And ultimately, you know, I don't like to push, just like you said, I don't like to push this. The future is a two-tier society between an aristocracy and essentially the permanent underclass. But I think I'm 95% sure that's what's going to happen. And I prefer bitter truth over pleasant lies. And if we are right about that prediction, then it's better we know it now and try to prepare for it rather than kind of pretend otherwise, you know?
I think that's correct. I always say, like, it's never as bad as it seems, it's never as good as it seems. And I don't like to be a doomer, but I think if you aren't aware of the worst case scenario and what you would hypothetically do in said situation, I think you're just irresponsible. And so I like that take. What? Okay, I'm gonna bring it a different direction. And this, I got a few for you here. I'll let you go relatively soon. Complete like 180, and I want to talk about your love of the game. And I had Arthur Hayes come on, and I bring a lot of traders on this stream, and Arthur was like fun to talk to. And one of the things you really could just like get from him is he just like loves this shit. Super rich, doesn't have to trade, has done a ton of successful stuff, but he just like loves to trade. He's like trading, actively taking positions every day, every week. He's actively taking positions. You are sort of, at least publicly, the antithesis of that. You're complete opposite. You have this like one massive belief, a couple Bitcoin SPX, and stop trading, believe in something is like who you are fundamentally now. I don't know, why do you still do this? Like why are you still excited about crypto? I'm sure you've made plenty of money publicly, privately, whatever. You could go do any job anywhere, make, build something, do whatever you want. Like what is it about crypto and this market that you still are like I mean, bro, I look at your Twitter, Murad, excuse me, you are like retweeting like niche stuff in the trenches. I don't know if it's you or who's running it, but you are like retweeting like niche replies. Like what is it for you at this point?
Yeah. So if you actually study a lot of the things that I've talked about, fundamentally, you come to the conclusion that fiat money and a lot of other things in the world are actually fundamentally sinister. And I think that BTC going way higher than here, SPX 6900 going way higher than here, all of these things are essentially a way to kind of counterattack, to push back, and essentially to purify the world.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of something that, goes to 100 billion plus, goes to 500 billion plus, goes to a trillion plus. I want to be a part of, socio-cultural change. And it's just exciting. It's just exciting to be a part of something that goes parabolic, exponential, whatever you want to call it. It's just a fun adventure.
Purify the world is crazy framing. I like it. It's crazy though. Do you like, did you want to be famous? Do you like being famous? And I know it's niche bubble, but crypto fame is a unique type of fame because the people that, I don't want to use the word worship, but the people that respect you and follow what you do have a lot of money. So I always say this, one ThreadGuy stream viewer is 100 Kai Cenat viewers plus. So maybe there's 300 people watching this, but net worth scaled is probably 30,000 or 300,000 brain rot normie viewers. Did you like intend to be famous? And do you like being famous, Murad, the Memecoin guy that gets 3,000 likes on every tweet everybody knows?
Several years ago, my friend asked my other intelligent friend, if there's one person in the world you would want to switch places with, who would it be? And he answered in a way that I really liked. He said, the least famous billionaire in the world, right? So I always shared a similar philosophy, but here we are. I've been put into the spotlight, and we just have to make the best of it. But fame was never something that I chased in particular.
I mean, you wake up every day and you're filming TikToks for SPX?
No, what I'm doing is different now. I'm doing more long form content. It's actually much easier to make long form content and then cut that up into pieces rather than the other way around.
And how has that been? I make some TikToks. It's tough. It's tough. Like, how has that been?
I've been enjoying it. I think medium length content is the way to go.
Interesting. For TikTok or for you, all platforms, or what do you think?
For most platforms, because ultimately, if you only do short form, you're essentially mostly going to be putting yourself in front of degenerates. You actually want to be attracting people that have kind of at least 5,000, 10,000, 25,000. And those people, they're at least going to watch a 10-minute thing before making an investment decision or continuing to hold or whatever. And I think it's much better to build a core community of sort of like upper middle class people that are true believers and have actually educated themselves, are in line with the trends. Because if you only do short form, I don't think you're attracting the best people. Ultimately, I think short form is important and it plays a role, but you want people to give you your full long form thoughts, so to speak.
That's why I like stream, because you get the full interview and then you get the like to chop it up in a short form. I'm gonna go back real quick. Do you know, because I of the two things you've like really committed your reputation to, if you will, Bitcoin and then SPX, they're very like your framework for them are very similar. There's some differences, but the general idea is
Yep.
like has a lot of parallels.
And it's very similar. It's very similar. The reason is because Gen Z and even Gen Alpha and even Zillennials, young millennials, a lot of them missed BTC, obviously,
Yeah.
and they're essentially every 3 to 5 years they're going to be recreating another BTC 2.0, BTC 3.0 for them. You know, for some it was Doge, for some it was Ripple, for some it was GME. Essentially, a fuck you to the system, right? And I think SPX 6900 is next.
I was actually going to ask you a question, but there's in that interview you just did, there was this really interesting take I'd never considered, which is that, and you know, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, you could get rich and you could just sit on cash and you could be like a passive rich guy. And in 2025, things are moving so fast in markets and
well, let me tell you something. There's even people that they are getting 4% interest per year and they think they're getting passive income, but they don't understand that the money supply is growing at 8% per year, right? So you're just losing money either way.
So
that's why
I never heard
exactly why essentially the system is printing money at somewhere between 7 to 9% per year, which means that if you do nothing, you're losing 9% per year. And so even invest, like, you know, the stock market is also growing at roughly the rate of the money supply growth. So you actually have to ask yourself, like, what percentage of the stock market is actual economic growth as opposed to actually just running away from the money printing, right? You know, that's why you need a 20x, you need a 50x, you need a 100x to outrun all of this, to outrun the dilution. That's the only way.
Yeah, so I never thought about it like this. And I'm sitting here listening to you guys talk about this. I'm like, holy fuck. Like when people go on Twitter and they're like, you know, is 5 mil enough to retire? Is 10 mil enough to retire?
Well, like, people on crypto Twitter, they say, I'm going to make $10 million and then I'm going to put it in some, money market fund or some DeFi app or whatever. And I'm going to make 400,000 per year, which is 4%, right? And that's it. I'm going to live a good life on 400,000 400,000 per year. But they don't understand that the money supply is growing 7-8% per year. So you're actually losing money if you don't do anything. That's why essentially you have to continue hustling. Even if you have 10 million, you have to continue hustling still. You asked me, you made money from past cycles. Why are you still here? You have to continue hustling. You understand?
So this was like scary to hear this, Murad. I mean, I guess I've like heard pieces of it, but I never heard it like directly thrown in my face like this, which is like so left brain, which is like you used to be able to be passive rich, and now you will fundamentally have to be active rich. And
yeah. So in 1905, right? You had a small bar of gold. In 1905, it bought you 1,000 pieces of bread, right? In 1906, that would buy you 1,100 pieces of bread. That's how it used to be. That's what's called the era of sound money. But something has changed in 1913 and then in 1971, and now that is no longer possible. Essentially, they deliberately made it impossible for you to save. They made it very hard for you to save. Like dentists are not supposed to be stock pickers. You understand? And essentially, that's why BTC was invented in 2009, in 2008, 2009, because Satoshi understood this. And now people need to invent even other things because even, young people are thinking, I'm so fucked that even the 2-3x that BTC is going to give me in the next 2-3 years,
not enough.
That's not going to save you. That's not going to save you. That's why people are looking for other things or banding together to build other things.
Who's they? Like, do you think this was a conscious, like Illuminati-like decision or a bunch of bad decisions?
I think it's a combination of government and then a couple of world wars and then, Pax Americana, the banking system, corporations. It's a very complicated process.
What's your goal? Like, do you have any aspirations to be a leader in like politics or government or be the fucking Fed chair? Like, do you have any interest in this?
No, I have absolutely no. I will never take part in any sort of public sphere, government, politics. I think it's a very corrupt game. I actually have a mild distaste for anyone, involved in any kind of politics, especially in the West.
Whoa.
And instead, I admire entrepreneurs and I admire the private sector because they always win uphill battles, you know?
I can't believe I just asked you if you want to be the Fed chair one day. That was crazy.
I mean, no, I'm not an American, so I can never be a Fed chair.
Okay, that too. Yeah, the active thing like really had me fucking thinking about. Is there anything that you didn't consider in your original Bitcoin thesis that you realized you missed, or maybe let slip through the cracks that you've realized on the SPX thesis?
I don't think so. I think I try to, before I make any kind of investment decision, I try to look at everything that's going on, you know, like we discussed, social, political, economic, mental, emotional, spiritual, and all trends, in my opinion, are pointing to BTC going higher, and all trends are pointing to some kind of a next GME arising. And my belief is that some kind of a next GME is going to happen for sure. And my money is on SPX 6900.
Do you look up to Michael Saylor?
Yes, I think he was an incredibly great addition to the, you know, to the evolution of BTC.
Do you
Essentially,
think?
what he's trying to do is he's building a pipeline between TradFi and BTC, and he has been very successful at that.
Do you think he's gonna destroy what he propped up?
No, I think he is probably going to become the wealthiest person in the world.
Really? So
Actually, and I think essentially in the future, MicroStrategy is going to be the next Fed or the next JP Morgan.
whoa. So you don't believe that he is a systemic risk to the future of Bitcoin, and he has to get eliminated before we get to where we want to get to?
No, I think he's the best thing that has ever happened to BTC.
Whoa. Do you? Is any part of you, I don't know, cynical about how institutionalized Bitcoin has become? Because in 2018,
It was always going to. It was always going to happen. You know, it was always going to happen. You know, when you listen to your favorite punk rock band, and then 7 years later they go mainstream, and you're like, man, normies are listening to this now. But it's like, if something is going to become popular, where do you think that comes from? You know, so BTC was always going to get institutionalized as it's going towards 1 million, 2 million, $3 million. It's just impossible, because to get to those stages, you need bigger chunks of money, and institutions are the only ones who have it. Now that we have ETFs and DATs, the next step is actually sovereign wealth funds and governments, and we're seeing them slowly starting to adopt as well.
Do you like this DAT thing? Like, are you working? Is one coming for SPX? Like, do you think this is something all assets should have?
I cannot comment on that. Can neither confirm nor deny.
Whoa. You can't think it's good for AVAX to have a DAT, do you?
I don't look at the world in terms of good and bad. I look at more as an inevitable. And if something is inevitable, it's no point in complaining, and you just have to adapt to the inevitable. That's my take.
So Barachain DAT is just like inevitable. We just have to deal with it.
Just look at the incentives. I don't look at it from a moral perspective.
Okay. You were really right twice. Okay, you were really right on Bitcoin. You were really right on, let's just say, meme coins as a ideal. You made a comment in passing that I didn't comment on, but you said, like, the new generation will make their own run at a new Bitcoin every 3 to 5 years, right? And I think we have one right here. You seemingly, like, in theory, you could back another asset and you could find another one. Like, is that something that's in the cards? I'm not even trying to say this to insult or to fragment attention from SPX, but like, if this thing should appear, seemingly you would have your finger on the pulse and be on top of it, and you would see it. Like, do you expect this to happen? Something that isn't, your thing, to go parabolic? And if it were to happen, how do you play it? Like, are you pigeonholed into only two assets?
I'll tell you why. The best meme coins, they're actually becoming giant families for people. Essentially, they're becoming families, they're becoming friend groups, they're becoming communities, and increasingly, for the strongest ones, loyalty will be the most important thing. So I have to be as loyal as I possibly can to my existing picks, to my existing holdings, and either adding or switching or going to number 11, whatever, all of that would essentially be lowering loyalty. And I don't think that's the right move. I think loyalty is actually how you get to 100 billion plus. So to answer your question, no.
Do you regret the list?
No, I don't. Because I think a lot of the coins on that list are still going to do incredibly well. For example, we've seen Giga get their products into Walmart shelves today. We've seen Mog get an ETF. So I think many coins on the list are going to do well.
Camera just died?
1 second.
Yeah, you're good. I have like a sign up for you too, so if you can get it back on. Take your time though. I asked about the list and his camera broke. I'll meet him. All right, awesome. There you go. Hell yeah. Okay, I have 2 sign-offs for you. This was a lot of fun. First question is, I'll give you like a proper let you shill SPX 6900 like as hard as you want, like a proper, for people that are watching that don't hold. Give me like the proper show.
Absolutely. So the fiat values don't matter. I don't care about fiat values. All I care about is the strength of the community. And the SPX 6900 community is 100 times stronger than where it was a year ago, where it was in January. What people need to understand, that there's only one fundamental in crypto, and that is community. Community is the only thing that matters. If you study BTC, XRP, Doge, Cardano, all the biggest areas of crypto, all the biggest past success of crypto, they went up, they went parabolic because they were the strongest communities of those respective cycles. If you're doing the research, you know that SPX 6900 is the most passionate, the strongest, and the cultiest community of this whole cycle. And it has the biggest DCA culture since BTC. It has the biggest face doxing culture since BTC. It has the biggest IRL street onboarding since BTC. I haven't seen this since 2012, 2013. Has the biggest tipping culture, biggest Reddit culture, and the biggest number of books written about it since BTC. It will be super obvious in hindsight. There's a huge asymmetry here. SPX 6900 is going to be the coin that goes parabolic. We're at 50 cents right now. I believe we're going to $100 this cycle and $1,000 next cycle. Right now we're on a dip. This is your chance to get in. This is going to be the biggest movement since GME. And right now is the time for you to join the movement.
I tell that wasn't your first time. That was a good one. That was one of your. I think that was a good one. That was pretty concise. Are you like watching the 15-minute chart on this thing?
No, I don't check the charts.
Daily, at least, surely.
You know, we have a saying, there is no chart. And while it might sound crazy if taken literally, if you read between the lines, what it's actually saying is what matters is the community. What matters is the onboarding. The charts don't matter. The TA is essentially, it's a continuation of the fiat financial system that's designed to trigger your neurochemical response, anxiety, panic, etc. What matters is continuing to believe and continuing to persist. As long as we persist, we're going to take this to 100 billion plus, 1 trillion plus, and this is essentially our way out of the challenges and the suffering that the system is causing.
Have you ever felt this way about anything prior to Bitcoin?
No.
Like,
but there are a ton of parallels between SPX 6900 and BTC, and I'm seeing them. I was there in 2013, 2016, 2017 when BTC was truly maturing for the first time and starting to go viral. I'm seeing very same parallels here as well in SPX 6900. Ticker SPX. Stop trading and believe in something. Join the movement.
That last one had to be pre-recorded. You just played a pre-recorded video. No, that was awesome. Okay. It's almost like I can't not respect it. It's like so I gotta get my fucking pitch this dialed. It's like that was the last sign off. That sounded like a commercial. The last question I want to ask you And I mean, you can weave in the shill if you want, but you don't have to. And it is, maybe you could like add it at the end. Advice for the general, I would say general younger crowd, like sub 30, sub 40, sub 50 that watches the ThreadGuy stream, that tunes in, that's still here in a downturn, actively trading markets, hasn't made it, listens to this convo, and you feel the weight of your future generation, your bloodline, set time frame to make it or be stuck in the permanent underclass. Like, what is your advice to these people to get out of that, to accelerate to the top 5, top 1% of, their generation?
So first of all, make sure at least 20 to 30% of your portfolio is in BTC. And I would start encouraging people to look at it as your savings vehicle. I would not recommend to invest in real estate. I think BTC is going to outperform real estate in the next, 10, 15, 20 years. And I would also strongly recommend you to look into SPX 6900, which I think is going to do incredibly well, because essentially it's a more perfected version of GME.
Rod, yeah, man, it was a pleasure, honestly. I've heard a lot of your interviews. I know you kind of have like a thesis, and that like is sort of your takes, but I feel like you gave some interesting perspectives on it today. I got a couple smiles too, which was awesome. And yeah, what's the point of, you're just like on a media tour right now? You just like doing these, or what's up with that?
I think these are great, and I commend you for becoming the #1 streamer in crypto also. But ultimately, the world is increasingly attention, the world is increasingly media, the world is increasingly online. Everybody is an influencer to some extent or another, whether they like it or not. You just got to play the game. And these long form, essentially videos are very good for the algorithm. You can cut it up into shorter pieces as well. So, we just got to spread the message, spread the gospel.
Last one, actually, on that point. Do you have any advice for me on what I'm doing, where media is headed in crypto, financial media, streaming? Like, you're in a very similar sort of niche now.
If you purchase at least $10,000 worth of SPX 6900, I will respect you and support you for the rest of your media career.
That's the number, $10,000, and
that's the number.
That's the number. And you'll give me like a long form take on it in the DMs too.
Whatever you want.
Whatever I want. All right, Murad, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on. I'll see what I can do with the SPX thing. It was an absolute pleasure, man. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, man.
All right, dude.